Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Burano, which is a 2 to 4 player Euro strategy game that takes about an hour to an hour and a half to play. The game is set in Burano, and the idea is that you're trying to build lacework factories, or buy or collect and sell fish for points, build roofs on buildings, and do lots of different things in order to get victory points in order to be the winner. Now the game is published by Emporer S4 Games, who I've tended to enjoyed their games in the past, but they generally make smaller kind of 2-player filler style games, whereas this one is the first big box game that I've played of theirs. It's a pretty heavy game. There's a lot of rules, quite a lot to think about during a turn, which is either going to really appeal to you or kind of detract you from the game. But the main essence of the game is based on kind of 3 core actions, but before you go into those actions, you're going to basically build a cube tower on your individual player board, which is going to dictate the kind of actions you can take throughout the game, because you're going to build a pyramid basically made up of a 3x3 grid, and then a 2x2 grid on top of that, and then a single cube on top of that. And the importance of that is that basically you can only ever take exposed cubes, as if you're looking downwards on that pyramid, which dictate the actions you can take, because there's, I believe there's 6 different colours of cubes in the game, and a pair of those colours, or any combination of 2 of those colours, is going to basically be assigned to a certain action you can take corresponding to those colours. So once you've built your pyramid, you're going to go into the main phase of the game, which is kind of boiled down into 3 key actions you can take. And the first one is to prepare one of those cubes, where you're going to take one of the available pyramid cubes and put it into kind of a holding area which is available to be used. The second one is to place one of those cubes onto the main board, and that main board is obviously shared amongst all the other players. And you're going to have a huge kind of grid, and you're going to have to place one of those cubes in a diagonal method in relation to an existing cube on that board. And when you place that cube, you are going to get the corresponding action to the colour that I mentioned earlier. So you've got 3 actions associated with those colours. You've got fishing, you've got the lacework, and you've got collecting money. Now the fishing is very simple. Basically there is a certain amount of islands, I think it's 6 islands surrounding the the main island of Burano. And you are going to sail to an adjacent island and collect fish cards based on this kind of drafting mechanism, where you've got 3 face-up cards, or you can always skim off the top of the deck on a face-down pile. But there is a bit more that goes into this, which I'll mention later. And then you can basically claim one of the islands by putting one of your little tokens on there from your main board, which acts as in a kind of area control style method. Additionally, once you've got a certain amount of cards, you can always go to these ports and trade them in for victory points. So you're going to trade them in kind of either 4 individual cards, or 4 of the same cards, or in pairs, or even triples. And all the kind of the difficulty of collecting these different sets is based on the points you'll get in return. And then the port cards will rotate to the other side of the board, so you can't keep kind of spamming the same action. The second action, or the second associated action to those colours, is to build a lacework factory, which is on a separate part of the board, where you have all these different kind of interconnected tiles, and you are going to be placing markers from your board onto those tiles, almost in the kind of area control style region. But once you start somewhere, you can only ever build orthogonally from where you've built before. And again, that counts for area control, which will tie into a later action. And the third action is based on collecting money, and money is a very tight resource in this game. And when you collect money, you are basically going to take an amount of money compared to the amount of your tokens you've already deployed on the board. So the more you deploy on the board, the more money you're going to take in return, which can be a kind of a double-edged sword. So those are the 3 kind of key actions you can take in terms of placing a cube onto the board. The second core action you can take is to build a roof, where obviously as you are building more and more of these blocks onto the main board, you're going to have a whole array of different colours. And there's an option to place one of these roof tiles on top of 2 of those cubes, based on, or if you match those colours. And when you match those colours, you are going to get points depending on different things. So One of them will offer points based on how many islands you control, based on that fishing mechanism. One of them will based on how many tiles you control, based on the Lacework mechanism, and the other one will just straight up give you victory points. There's also another one as well, which depends on how many basically bells you're exposed by. Placing more tokens onto the board as you kind of vie for area control and stuff. And the final action you can take is to basically collect money. And that is basically, as I said, exposed. How many coins are exposed is how much coins you're going to take back into your pool. Money is very important because you're not confined to only taking one of those actions on your turn. You can actually choose to take more, but the more actions you take, the more money you're going to have to pay. So I think for the first, if you take just one single action, then you actually gain a coin. If you take two actions, then you're going to have to spend 3 coins in total. I think it goes up to 5 and then up to 7, or even higher than that. And it's kind of quite unlikely that you're going to always take the higher amount of actions because you just simply won't have the funds to do so. But there's further restrictions that go into the game because whenever you place either people on the islands or you place people on the factories, you're obviously losing tokens from your main board. And whenever you do that, you've got this wheel that rotates, which will point to three different colours, obviously associated to the cubes and associated to different things. Because on each of those fishing islands, you've actually got 3 different docks, I suppose they're called, all associated with a different colour. And basically, if you match those colours of those docks with the arrows that are pointed to on your player board wheel, you're going to be able to take more powerful actions. So if you only match one of the colours, you're only going to be able to draw 1 card when you when you draw fish cards, or if you match all 3, you can draw more than that. Also, it means you can deploy more workers if you match more colours or more of your tokens to fight for the area control. And when you do fight for the area control, you actually kick other players off as well, which means that they can take their tokens back onto their board. And also that dictates the Lacework action as well. So again, more colours you're matching, the more people you can deploy. And the reason why it's a double-edged sword is because although obviously you're controlling more regions and you're controlling more factories in order to gain more points when you place those roof tiles, you are actually restricting yourself going forward, because at the end of each round you are only going to gain cubes back in relation to how many tokens you've got left on your board. So for each token is going to be associated with a different colour. So basically if you only have a couple of tokens left, then you're only going to take a couple of cubes back, which can restrict the actions you're going to take going forward. So if you're only taking blue and yellow tokens back, but the fishing actions associated with a white cube, then you're not going to be able to fish in future rounds, which can be very, very important. And I do really like that. Something about the tower mechanism, which I should mention as well, is that it can be very, AP prone, because you've got to have to meticulously, plan your actions. But I would really recommend not overthinking it and just building a kind of balanced tower and try to not restrict yourself as much as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the game. Something I should say as well is when you are building those roofs on the main board, you do actually additionally get to take prestige points by doing so, which kind of gives you more flexibility, which lets you move because it lets you kind of freeformly move the different colours associated with each island. It lets you kind of ignore some of the orthogonal placing rules on the Lacework grid. And it also lets you just simply cashing a prestige to take a cube of your choice. So prestige points give you a lot of flexibility that lets you mitigate some of the restrictions you might have. And that's pretty much the gist of the game. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot to think about. Obviously, you're planning your money to plan your actions. The spatial puzzle of the game becomes really interesting as well, because as more cubes are placed onto the board, not only are you building roofs on those existing cubes, you can actually build cubes on top of the roofs and then build roofs on top of that. So that really becomes a big 3D spatial puzzle. You're trying to capitalize when you know other players might do so. Lining up opportunities for yourself to place your roofs. When you place roofs, you can actually forsake taking the prestige and take some building cards as well, and those building cards can give you lots of different bonuses. Either straight up victory points, or it can give you kind of bonuses based on how many factories you're controlling at the end of the game and stuff like that. There's also a strange mechanism at the end of each round where based on the control of the Lacework factories, you can choose to remove your tokens from the board in order to get victory points, and the more you kind of line up, you can get bigger bonuses, which is quite an obtuse mechanism, and that's pretty much where this game sits. It's a game where on a wholesome view, the game is pretty simple, but there are a lot of different avenues or different kind of spokes to go down, which just amp up the complexity, such as the color restrictions, the thought of not leaving yourself with, or how to use your tokens most effectively, because you want them on the board because you want area control, but you still want them in order to gain more cubes. You need to know, you can, when you take the cash action, you can take more of your tokens off and get more money, which can be a necessity at times because money is so tight. And it's just knowing what to do at the right time, having to plan your pyramid in a way that you can always be flexible to do what you want to do at all times. And yeah, so there's a lot of kind of nuances and a lot of almost, I hesitate to call it fiddliness, because that kind of added complexity or the extra wrinkles in the game is what makes me enjoy a lot of these Euro games. But when you're trying to explain it to somebody, there are a lot of kind of additional little rules and little kind of sidetracks to go down, which can be a bit deterring and can be a bit overwhelming at times. Now, that being said, I think if you are a more kind of experienced Eurogamer, then a lot of these things are going to feel a bit more comfortable. But if you've only kind of played mid-weight Euro games, then there's some of this stuff that just might seem a bit extra and a bit a bit too much for you to digest at once. Now, that's either going to be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on where your kind of mind is. I actually personally enjoy that, because I think without all those additional wrinkles, then I think it would be a pretty average game. Not a bad game, but not as good as I think it is. I love the restriction of only being able to use certain colours at certain times. I really like the area control mechanism is quite interesting and based on the Lacework, because again, you want to line up those colours, you want to know when to use your prestige points, knowing to line up your buildings, to know when to put your roofs down, knowing when to take the prestige in order to mitigate things, or knowing when to build more or have the buildings at the right times, because some of those buildings are really good and you're not going to be able to see a lot of them at all times, because there's quite a big deck of cards there, and only you're not going to go through them each game. So each game is going to seem a bit different in terms of the opportunities you can take on those building cards. I love the idea of having to pay more to do more, because sometimes you'll only be taking a couple of actions per turn, and but sometimes you can have those really powerful turns where you're taking 4 actions and you can get a lot done. The placing of the pyramid tile is, as I said, it can be a bit AP prone, but I wouldn't worry too much about it and I wouldn't overanalyze it too much. But yeah, there's a lot of meaningful decisions that go into this game, and I think you're going to have to play well to do well in this one. You can't just wing it, because if you're going to over kind of or take too much of a bite in terms of placing your tokens down, you're going to leave yourself quite restricted in terms of going forward. So it's knowing, as I said, that balancing your tokens to your dominance on the board. And mechanically there, as I said, although it's boiled down into a very few simple actions, which is quite nice, the kind of downfall or the kind of the waterfall effect of taking those actions can be quite quite taxing in terms of your thought process. So there is a lot of meaningful decisions to take. Placing the right cubes in the right place in order to place your roofs down in future, but also bearing in mind the cube you're placing is associated to either a fishing, Lacework, or money action as well. So you want to constantly be as efficient as you can in order to be, in order to do as much as you can as cheaply as possible. Time investment wise, I mean, the game takes about an hour to an hour and a half to play, which is about right for me. It didn't outstay its welcome, considering there was a lot you have to think about. I think if it went any longer than that, then it would kind of start to overstay its welcome, but I think it was okay. I mean, I was engaged throughout the whole game. I didn't lose interest, which is really important and a sign of a decent game. Uptime as well is pretty good because the actions are very snappy. Again, if you're just taking a couple of actions, just literally just prepare a cube, place a cube on the board, take the sail, take a card, whatever, and place a roof, whatever. That could be your 3 turns. So it's pretty quick. Obviously, there's a little bit of housekeeping on top of that, but not too overwhelming at all. And you didn't find yourself just waiting for other people to take their turns. Replayability is something that I'm a little bit skeptical about. Now, I think this game has got a few plays in it, but I'm not sure if it will stand up to, you know, going up to 5 or 10 plays, because there is not a lot of avenues to go down. There is pretty much, you're always going to have to dabble in all of those 3 things. You're going to have to fish, you're going to have to do your lacework, you're going to have to take the money. It's not like there's some out of the box strategies you can go down and explore, but that being said, there is still constantly things to think about at all times. You're never going to be on autopilot when you play this game, so every time you play it, you're going to have to think. But again, there's not a lot of out-of-box strategies to go down and you know, to keep you trying new things each game. Interaction-wise is okay. I mean, there's obviously the shared board is quite important in terms of having to place your roofs down at the right time. The area control is somewhat important as well, because you want to be controlling most of the regions, because you're going to get points at the end of each round. But not only that, when you place your roof towers, you want to be controlling more regions in order to get more points. And obviously, yeah, the area control style is embedded player interaction, because as soon as you go to an island and you place one of your tokens down, you can actually kick somebody else off. And a good thing about the game is, though, is when you are kicked off an island, you actually do take a bit of money. So it's not too ferocious, and it's just a good amount of player interaction. Aesthetically, the game is really good looking. I love the way the game looks, especially the big colourful blocks that you're going to place down, and they're used a lot in the game as well. So it's not like it's just aesthetically pleasing for the sake of it. You know, they're nice bright colours, they're nice and tactile, but they're always obviously used to build your cube tower, but they're placed on the board. Obviously the colours are important for the roofs you're going to place, so it's very aesthetically pleasing. I would have liked the cards to be a little bit bigger, but no big issue there. But yeah, overall the package and quality of the components is pretty nice. I mean, no complaints there whatsoever, but the cubes are really where it does stand out. Theme-wise, I mean, it's a very kind of, you know, kind of a dry Euro, I suppose, but all the colour, the vibrancy does shine through quite well, and it works. You know, it's not a thematic game, but the theme does wrap together with the aesthetics and, you know, the mechanisms. Okay, setup and teardown time is not too much of an issue. I mean, I suppose the main fiddliness is the actual setup of the individual player boards, because you've got this kind of quadrant of different colours that are going to be kind of variable. You've got the all the different tokens that go on your wheel, which is kind of spinning throughout the game as well. So there's a bit of fiddliness in terms of the tokens and stuff, but not too much of an issue. And although it's quite a sprawling game, it's not like it's just, everything is pretty much digestible at the same time. The game does have a nice sense of progression, because obviously as you're playing, the game is really, or the map of Burano is really filling up, and more kind of roof placement opportunities do present themselves, which is great. Obviously you're collecting cards throughout the game as well, which you're going to have to try to either, you know, do quick cash grabs to get points, or you can really go for those big combinations and get a lot of points that way. The balance of the lacework and the fish action, I think, is somewhat disjointed. I think there's a lot more points to be had from the fishing action, but again, you're going to have to kind of interact with both of these mechanisms, because you're going to be forced to. So no real issue there. And comparison-wise, I mean, I'm not sure if there's anything directly like this. I don't know what uses that kind of pyramid action. But it does have this kind of, obviously, that set collection mechanism of collecting the fish types, trading them in based on the different kind of suits you have and stuff. So a lot of games do use that mechanism, but there is a lot kind of individual about this game and unique about the game as well, especially that colour wheel, you know, the colour cube tower, the roof placement and stuff like that. It's really nice. So there's a lot different here than your average Euro game. But yeah, overall, you know, while this game is pretty heavy, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of almost fiddliness, I did still really enjoy this one. I had a good time with it. Always constantly thinking about what you're going to do next. You know, I said the management of your resources and the management of your cubes. Money is a really important resource as well. I love the spatial puzzle. It's also aesthetically pleasing. I mean, as it builds up, it's quite just, you know, quite satisfying to watch the city develop as the game goes on. you know, taking the right cards at the right time, obviously, because you've got that kind of face-up market, which people are going to want certain cards before you do. Knowing when to go to the ports at the right time, because sometimes you can really line up a powerful move, try to go to the port, but then somebody goes there before you, and that kind of combination of cards to cash in goes to the other side of the board. So there is a real tension throughout the game, and always a lot to think about. And yeah, if you like your heavier end or kind of medium heavy end of Euro games, this is definitely one to check out. It's probably, I'm not sure if it does have a mechanism or too much kind of placed into it. You know, there's some obtuse rules which could be a bit off-putting, but again, I think the reward from that does counteract quite well. I don't think the rules overhead is too much for the rules themselves or for the game itself. I think they do go quite well together, and the reward you get from the game is worth kind of ploughing on through those rules. Now, a regular criticism I've read of the game is that the rulebook is really bad. I personally didn't have an issue with that. I thought the rulebook was absolutely fine. So hopefully that can reassure you somewhat if you have heard that comment before. But yeah, this is a solid Euro game, one that I'll look forward to playing again. I don't know if it will stand up to, as I said, to the higher player account of things. It's not going to be a game you're going to come back to again and again and again and again, but it's got a good few plays out of it. And you know, if you like getting new games to the table regularly or just trying new things, then I do recommend trying out Burano. It's a solid game that's going to really pull you in a lot of different directions. So that concludes my thoughts on Burano. It gets a very good verdict from me, which is about 7.5 out of 10. You know, who knows where it's going to go from there. I think maybe it's either going to go up as I appreciate it more, or as I've kind of explored it more, it's going to fall slightly. But something I will say about it as well is that not often when I play games, you know, when I finish, I go about thinking about the game, what I could have done differently and stuff. This is actually one I did do that one, so that's a good sign as well. You know, when I found myself in bed later in the night, I thought, oh, I really did enjoy that. That was a lot more. You know, you get a lot more out of it than you realise at the time. So, yeah, another good comment for us. So, yeah, about a 7.5 out of 10 for me. A really good game, and check it out if you like your medium-heavy Euros. So, that's Burano. If you have enjoyed the review, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other videos too. You can also support me by following me on Instagram or backing me on Patreon. I'll leave the links below for those. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.